Welcome to The Dead Life. Today we're celebrating my 100th episode. I've had so many incredible guests on my show over the last 2 years, and I'm so grateful to my listeners for tuning in every week. I've been counting down to my 100th episode over the last several weeks with some of your favorite guests. Rich Berra, the hilarious morning show host from Kiss FM in Phoenix, among other cities. They're sort of all over the place. My incomparable husband, Joe, Father Nathan Castle, and Master Astrologer Tom McMullan. So when I was racking my brain trying to decide who would land at number 100, it seemed obvious to me that all of my guests stand out for different reasons. So today, we'll be taking a look back at episodes from the last 2 years that inspired us all. You can follow me on Instagram at Medium Allison. Make sure my name is spelled right. And I do not DM people for readings. That's a scammer. You can see what I'm up to on my Facebook fan page. You can binge on my YouTube videos. And you can see me live in October in Denver, Colorado, Chicago, Illinois, and Irvine, California. In 2023, I'll be coming to Dallas, Texas, Scottsdale, Arizona, and Nashville, Tennessee. For more information, go to AllisonDubois.com. All right, that's a lot. So, Joe, it's my 100th episode, so pour me a glass of champagne. I love the Fantasy Island champagne glasses.
All right.
Yay.
It's a party. Here, cheers.
Cheers. Oh, we've had a lot of cheers together.
All right.
Cheers to all of you. What champagne are we drinking?
We are drinking the One Hope champagne.
I love that. And those were the silver glittery bottles that we had for our 25th wedding anniversary. So One Hope is a really cool company, and they're not paying me to do this or anything. I just really like them. And part of the proceeds, if you order the champagne, which we're probably going to order for our daughter Fallon's wedding from One Hope, I think like 10% goes to charity, and you get to pick the charity. So I like that. It's cohesive. So let's talk about the last 2 years. This was such a whirlwind. Dead Life started. The Dead Life started in COVID. And I was asked if I wanted to do a podcast. And I thought, I've never done a podcast. I wouldn't know the first thing about it. And they said, well, you know how to talk. And I said, yeah, that I do. So we gave it a shot, and it's turned into something I'm very proud of. And I've learned a lot from my guests, and I have many of them on so that just to learn from them, honestly, fascination with what they do, and thinking that my listeners are also going to hear something they haven't heard before. So I think we're starting with one of my very favorite guests who produced one of my very favorite movies, Somewhere in Time. I am honored to be speaking with Mr. Stephen Simon. How has it been for you to personally experience a story of love and loss?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to talk to you as well.
Thank you.
As far as answering that question is concerned, it feels to me that this book is the culmination of my career. And it really is where my life has been inevitably headed. I think it was a plan for this lifetime because Somewhere in Time is certainly about a man, could have been a woman, but in that case, a man searching for his soulmate, who has preceded him to the other side of the veil. What Dreams May Come is exactly about that. We spent 16 years doing the Spiritual Cinema Circle, and all of our films focused on that. So the fact that now Lauren and I, my wife Lauren and I, wrote this book together about what dreams have come, that we are now communicating through the veil, it really does feel to me like an extension of my entire life.
Wow. I mean, he's not just a talented man. He's been through a lot. His wife was young when she passed unexpectedly. I know that he's had to work through his grief. But he's not just interesting, he's very soulful. There's just something very soulful about Stephen. And I really appreciate being able to count him amongst our friends. I never thought that would happen when I was watching Somewhere in Time. And I love that he actually dished on, because I'm all nosy, he dished on Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour and their real life love affair and the details concerning that. I mean, the chemistry was palpable. It had to be real. We all felt it. Still, if you put that movie on, you'll feel the steam between them. It's quite intense.
And you've seen it at least 100 times.
That's actually true. And our daughter Aurora learned how to play the theme on the piano, which is one of my favorite pieces of music. It's so beautiful. So thank you to Stephen Simon for gracing our ears with his interesting interview and being a friend of the show.
Well, and he really did open up an idea there that they created their heaven together on Earth
before she passed, right,
and then collaborated on the movie after she passed.
Yes,
and so those were pretty, I don't know, for me, pretty mind-bending ideas.
Did they collaborate on the movie or the book?
The book, I guess, yes.
They collaborated on the book after she passed. I thought it was an interesting idea or notion for couples to decide what their heaven's going to look like before one of them's not here, so that the one that's still living can at least imagine what they're going to and not just wait with anticipation, but a little bit of joy and maybe peace of mind knowing what's waiting for them. So kudos to Stephen for, again, thinking outside of the box.
Yes, thank you, Stephen.
And so next,
I'd like to talk to you about time of death and what you've experienced
Start a little quick.
to enduring a
We'll
passing.
jump right in.
Could you share that with us?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing is everyone's passing is exactly how they live here on Earth. So some people like a big spectacle, and some people do it quietly in the night. To see how some people embrace it and some people run from it. And that was always interesting to me. Lisa, what about you?
I think the biggest thing that I've seen is, as nurses, we're supposed to always put down, objective data. And so what I've seen the most is when people are getting close to their passing, they'll start to reach out. They'll be in the bed and their arms are reaching up. You're walking in the room and there's nobody in and they're talking to somebody, and you ask them, "Oh, who are you talking to?" And, the patient will answer, "Oh, Uncle Joe." So then you ask the family, "Who's Uncle Joe?" "Oh, Uncle Joe passed 10 years ago."
It's interesting. That was an episode from 2020, and they're sort of the guardians of Heaven's Gate. They're the ones that are there when the transition occurs, and their job is not only important. Some people don't have family when they're passing. It soothes their soul so much to have a warm hand and a soft voice there to be with them in their moment of passing. What did you take away from Angels of the Hospice? I think that's one of my favorite episodes because they have such an interesting function between the body and the soul.
It was to have the perspective of somebody that's been there for perhaps hundreds of people that have passed. They had one of the healthiest and most understanding view of what it is to transition. And that was good to see us, and thankful that there's people that exist that do that for a living. But what did I think? The whole reaching up, when they see their lost loved ones and they're passing over, that was comforting because that's always what they show in movies, and that's what people kind of talk about. But then to know it's real, that was nice. That your loved ones are really there.
That somebody's actually witnessed it,
and they've witnessed
moment.
it. Yeah, lots and lots of times, and that it's of course it's the people. I mean, I just get chills right now. It's the people that you want to be there. I mean, it's your loved ones. They're the ones that are helping you over, and that's, I don't know, that's wonderful.
I think that the nurses that some of them are volunteers. Some people are wired to be angels I call them angels of the hospice, to be there in somebody's for a lot of people, most frightening moment. Some people are afraid to die. Actually, many people are afraid to die. So for them to be there in those moments brings a lot of comfort to those who are passing, because for women who have had kids, and I know they'll understand what I'm saying here, when you're giving birth, there's a moment where you think sometimes, at least I did, I'm like, did I really want to do this? This is kind of scary. I don't really want my body to go through that. I don't want to go through it. And so there's this moment of not wanting it, but yet the function is happening and you can't stop it, which is, right. It can be a little frightening too. And then you gain acceptance in your mind and obviously lean into it, but nobody else can do it for you. And I see death as the same way, is that when you're passing, it's something you have to do alone. People can hold your hand, which makes it better and it eases the soul for your transition. But in those moments, I think people do a life review in their mind, recognizing everything that led up to this moment that's one of few things in their life they had no control over, and accepting it and going with it. When family members or friends, sometimes it's guys that were in the military with the person passing, they show up a lot for their buddies. That just eases them so much into this transition because they know where they're going, and it's just an awareness of a continuum that we don't end, and it's going to be okay. And so then they're able to let go more easily. I do hear from people a lot there, especially with the men, I would say, and maybe it's because they can be more left-brained, that they're very afraid of dying. And so I hope this episode helped those people to reconsider their view on death.
And one of the nurses did talk about that, how they lived is how they died, and that some people were afraid to die and other people were okay with it. And I have to, I worked in a hospice. I volunteered in high school, and I saw the same thing. Some people, they were trying to make amends. And
okay, but that's a big thing, and you're just now sharing that with people. You worked in a hospice. That's kind of amazing.
It was, it was.
He's also MacGyver. He can fix anything. No, go ahead.
I volunteered. It was part. I went to a Catholic high school as part of our service, and it was an amazing experience. It was hard though. They ended up putting me and my friend Mike into washing dishes because helping with the patients was emotionally a lot
for some young guys like that.
Yeah,
I would think so.
Yeah.
When we were already together, but I always thought you had the energy of a doctor. You just had a stomach for anything. Blood never bothered you. Our kids getting stitches never bothered you.
I can take notes. My handwriting's terrible.
But, your real love was rocket science. So good for them.
Yes.
Good for them.
Yes.
So let's see. So now we're going into 2021 with Pets in Heaven.
Susan, welcome to my show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And it was sad to hear from you. It wasn't, good news, but it was also so good to hear from you. And you're such a good kitty cat mommy or grandmother, I guess I should say.
No, mommy's fine.
Okay.
Sophia was 9 when we got Daisy, so I'm gonna group her in there. Yeah. I remember when the kitties were brought over to the house, and the mom was one of them, the mother of the litter, and she was beautiful. She was great. And then Joe said, "I want a boy," and Sophia's like, "I want a girl." So we ended up with 2. So we adopted Daisy May and Sinatra. Wow. And so I see her out there, and there's a cat that looks just like her but young, nose to nose with her. So I'm like, I'm observing them, but ready, like throwing the door open because I don't want a cat fight. And when I open the door and I'm looking at them and I'm realizing that they're not upset, that they're almost looked like mirror images of each other of who she was when she was young. And the young cat looked at me and then ran up the tree that was in our yard, and it never came back. And she died 2 weeks later. And I said, it's almost like a foreshadowing, you know?
Wow.
I just thought that was
or
so
maybe it
amazing.
was Kimberly.
Maybe. I mean, it could have been Kimberly coming for her because it looked just like her, but a young cat.
I thought that was such a powerful, it was very emotional for me because Daisy had just passed, but I didn't know that Daisy's sister, Kimberly, had passed, 6 months before that.
And they looked identical.
They looked identical. Susan Olsen and I used to send pictures back and forth because you just couldn't tell these two cats apart. But it was her sister coming for her, and it was very reassuring.
It was reassuring, and it was Susan that figured that out right on right on the episode. We hadn't put that together, but for your listeners, Susan Olsen played Cindy Brady on the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, I just think of her as a good time. She's our friend.
She's your friend, right.
But yeah, she played Cindy on the Brady Bunch, and
but she's a very active
animal rescue,
and
yeah, she's got a really big heart, and I don't know if everybody knows that about her, but she's just an all around good person, which I think you could hear in her voice and hearing her speak. She's great. And so having Susan Olsen on the show to talk Pet Heaven with me was great. And also because the cat that we love, Daisy May, is the sister to Susan's. I told you Hollywood's weird.
Right.
Beverly Hills is a small town.
It's a small
town. So
we
adopted sisters from the same litter and stayed in touch. So that's how that happened. And I'm glad to know her. So next, I believe, I don't know how the listeners feel about this, if this was one of their favorite episodes. I hope it touched you the way it touched me. We called it Mother's Day 2021.
Yay Networks.
Welcome to The Dead Life. Here's world-renowned medium, Alison Dubois.
May is the month that many of us celebrate our mother figures. By mother figures, I mean it could be your mom, it could be your grandma, it could be an aunt, it can be a godmother, it can be a neighbor that was your mom's best friend that became a second mother to you. Mother figures come in many different forms. Some of us will have brunch with our family on Mother's Day. Others will barbecue or share in their own family traditions. There are other people who will bring flowers to the cemetery on Mother's Day or reflect on their life with that special woman or women who raised them. Being a mother myself, I know that when you hold your baby for the first time, it's as if you captured a piece of heaven in your arms. Your life now revolves around protecting and loving your child.
Well, I didn't realize I picked that episode, but since it played, let's talk about it. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. A lot of people have their moms, and a lot of people have lost mothers. And on Mother's Day, it is particularly difficult, as our holidays. And so.
It was, you have your events near Mother's Day often between Mother's and Father's Day.
Right.
And Mother's Day's always been very meaningful because you have 3 daughters and you do the tea party. So you answered questions in that episode, and you said,
I see.
You asked to pick that episode, and I couldn't pick a single, one of the questions that, there was too much content there. So I just played the intro, and I happened to get my little, 5 seconds of fame because I read the intro.
Okay, yeah. That's what it's for. Got it. So for listeners out there that aren't from Arizona, I usually have it's kind of a Mother's Day, Father's Day event. I've been doing it for over a decade at that time of year. Sometimes it's closer to Mother's Day, sometimes it's closer to Father's Day, but most of the people that come are either grown children who miss a parent or there are parents who have lost children. Very powerful, very moving events. And there's a lot of camaraderie there. I've had a lot of friendships blossom from those events.
And everybody has a mother. So it's something we all relate to.
And a father, hopefully.
Well,
I guess not everybody does. I've been listening to statistics lately. Bummer. So let's go to 2022. Birthday present from heaven, which is the one I was actually excited about.
Andrea, thank you so much for sitting down with me today to talk about your mom.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Well, obviously our meeting was written in the stars, as they say, because I never go to basketball games. I'm more of a college football fan. Can you tell my listeners a little about your mom and her passing?
Yeah, so my mom passed away recently on New Year's Eve. And, my mom had been chronically ill like the last 5 years. So it's kind of like, it's leading up to it, but you don't know necessarily when. Mm-hmm. And I would say she passed quicker than I think like my family had expected. Right. But we also knew at the same time that she was definitely struggling a lot.
Right. That I thought it was such a serendipitous meeting between she and I, because yes, I don't go to basketball games, and we went to the Phoenix Suns game with our friend Ivy and Joey that night. Mm-hmm. And I was just in the sort of back area where, some people hang out with the food and drink. And it was just so strange that we even met, and that her mom had a picture of me and her where she met me at a book signing in the past. Mm-hmm. And then her daughter recognized me and we started talking, and I thought, now I have to read her. Mm-hmm. Obviously her mom worked really hard to get me to her daughter at that time.
Right. And her, she had been to the basketball games, but she didn't normally go. Right. That was a surprise.
Like her boss gave the tickets to them because he had to go out of town. Right.
So it was a last minute thing.
And then when you called her to set up the reading, it was her it turned out to be her birthday when she got the call with the reading schedule to bring her mom through, which was another way her mom was like saying happy birthday and letting her know that she's with her. Her mom was very powerful, very present. I enjoyed her a lot. The daughter and the mother. And I was just very moved by how hard the mom worked. Mm-hmm. And this was very specific to the mother's personality. She was very selfless. She was all about, worrying about her children and her husband. So for her to move mountains for her daughter, that did not surprise me. She must have had some special access to me. I don't know how that works on the other side, if we've met before, if I'm easier to get a hold of, but it seemed to work out, and I'm really honored to have brought her mom through for her. So,
and that happens pretty often, actually, that a special day or meaningful event happens right around when a reading happens.
The dead control my schedule. Mm-hmm. And when I conduct readings, I always tell my client, I say, I'm a secretary. The dead is the boss. Like, they run my schedule. And sometimes they all get sick, and it's not that necessarily they're making me sick. I mean, I don't know how that works either. I'll let you know when I die. Right. But something will happen and it'll get moved to a day I don't normally work. Right. That will happen to be the day that they died, or their birthday, or their anniversary, right? For them and their wife or their husband. So I'm always, I'm just amazed by it, but I trust them, mm-hmm. and I just let them guide me. I think I must have a whole lot more faith in the dead than a lot of people do, because I never question it. It's always for a reason. And if I have to have a day off because they say so, then so be it. If I have to work on a Monday.
That's true. You got to just take it that one day at a time.
So the Silver Witch from 2022. And for listeners, just so they understand, Margaret Jameson is who we're referring to here. And she's going to be teaching our Earth Magic course through Dead University. She's going to be our professor of earth magic. She's fascinating. I loved having her on the show, and she's going to be on in October as well, because, you know, with Halloween, I've got to have our favorite silver witch on. So let's go ahead and hear from her. Well, Margaret, it's such a pleasure to talk to you today. I know my listeners are going to be charmed by you. Do depictions of witches in Hollywood bother you?
Yes. I
honest.
really think that stereotype is very harmful because there's witches all among us, and they don't look like that, Allison. More than anything, the depictions that are fear-mongering depictions are the ones that are the most harmful. I personally love the movie Practical Magic, and most of the witches I know do, because that shows a clear depiction, I think, of how most witches, you know, believe and act in our country. It shows the intergenerational knowledge being passed down. And I think that it shows witches wanting to help people in the community and share that knowledge.
I could listen to her all day. I don't know how you feel about it. She has a very cool online store under Granny Magic.
Yep.
MAGICK.com, Granny Magic. And she's got all of the sage you could need, the dragon's blood sage, like all the cool things that the mugwort that you could put in your tea. For spiritual protection.
And oils that you, protection and abundance.
Success oils, love oils. I mean, and just so people understand, it's grown in the garden. Like, these are just extractions of plants that have been known for centuries and handed down from generation to generation to help with certain emails.
If you could do that, I would.
To help with certain illnesses, ailments is where I was going with that. Can help spiritually to cleanse you, such as lavender.
Right.
So this really comes down from our little old grandmas up in the mountains.
And hers are rooted in Appalachia.
Yeah.
And
she's a she's a multi-generational witch. And people ask about witches all the time. There's just different varieties, and the reason she calls herself a silver, well, we call her a silver witch. It used to be gray, but silver sounds snazzier, so we changed it. So there are white witches that are, you know, just use the properties for, you know, positive things. There's the dark magic, who is more kind of voodoo,
Santeria and all that.
Santeria, like things that can wish a lot of ill intent on other people. And then there's what she refers to as being more of a gray or a silver witch, which is where if somebody's being hurt by something else, another person with magical information is trying to curse them somehow, that sort of thing, she'll create something to counter what's been done to her client. And so that's why she's sort of in between the two, which I respect, because you can't take it on the chin forever.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. So let's hear Growing Up Medium from 2021. Well, Sophia, thank you for joining me today on my podcast, The Dead Life. What do you think is the first time you remember having an experience around the other side or predicting something? How old were you around?
Well, I've heard of it from you, but the first thing I probably remember that was really like specific, I guess, was when Casey, my friend, was over at our house. Oh, yeah. Do you remember this?
Yeah,
I was, I don't know, 12.
Yeah.
And we were making a dance video in my room, as 12-year-olds do. And I remember the bathroom door was behind us, and it was open, but then it shut halfway through the video, but we didn't notice because we were so focused on the dance routine. But then when we went back to watch the video, we noticed it had closed and freaked out and screamed.
You know, I remember that, and it was so nice to have Sophia, our youngest, on. Because people saw her character was the baby on Medium, and they don't always get to hear from the real children, and now they're grown. So it was fun watching them grow up, knowing about the other side. And I remember that night that Casey was spending the night, because obviously somebody was always having someone spend the night. Sometimes all three of them had somebody spend the night. And I remember when they were doing that, and they came running downstairs, like flying downstairs, Mom, just screaming. And she showed me the video that she had set up on the tripod. So she showed me the footage. And the door didn't just close. It sort of closed slowly and then slammed.
Right. Yeah, it was intentional.
And there was no currents up there. We didn't have the air on because it was a different, it was comfortable. The weather was comfortable.
Yeah, there was no currents. And the great part is that they had the video camera kept running.
Right.
So you could see them come up to the door.
So funny.
And then try to figure out why did it shut.
And then they just started screaming.
And then they started screaming. Right.
And we had a girl that used to walk through our house who was dead. And so she was expecting that it could be her. I said, she's probably just playing with you. She didn't mean anything by it. So not everything has to be super scary. Sometimes they're just trying to play with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm really sure that that's what the girl that had died in our neighborhood, who was a teenager, I'm sure Sophia just reminded her of a little sister or something, and she was just giving her a bit of a jolt. So I love that. And there's so many stories from them growing up. There's too many to count. It was really fresh being able to raise kids not only with an understanding and a respect of the dead and of people with abilities, and that we're like everyone else, except we have this thing we can do.
Well, and they grew up that way, so they don't realize, if you ask them, a lot of times they'll say, well, maybe I have a little something. It's like, well, that's because your reference is
their only reference.
It's their only reference. So, but I think it makes them more human.
I do too. They love astrology. Fallon was into tarot big time when she was younger, and her godmother was a tarot reader and would teach her how to flip tarot. It was
even
just
now,
very cool.
Fallon naturally grows plants.
Yeah.
And you'll see the plants and it'll be like, okay, well, talk to Margaret. She'll tell you why those are the right plants. But they are. Intuitively, she knows,
Yeah. Is it plant lavender at the gate or rosemary? Rosemary.
But she has lavender too. And she does.
Well, you can... It's good to put both by your front door, so I get them confused sometimes. But
lavender's hard to grow, though.
You found out.
I found out the hard way.
Well, in Arizona, right? So yeah, Fallon has rosemary by her front door because negative or dark energy is not supposed to be able to pass that.
And she
plant.
was telling me that it also is a sign of a strong woman in the house.
Nice. That's my girl. So my two middle daughters, speaking of Fallon, this is 2021.
Maria, I know this is going back a bit. And I remember the first time I met you, it was on the filming of the pilot of Medium, pilot episode. But how did it feel when you were cast to play Bridget on Medium? Did you realize you were playing a real person?
I mean, it didn't quite click that I was actually working. It felt a lot like we were going to California and I was going to be on TV.
Right.
But I didn't really know what any of that fully meant.
Right.
And I spent my first couple of years staring at the camera.
You always seemed like you were having fun. You were always running around the set. And I met you on the pilot episode. And that was when I was basically introduced to my girls on the set. And you were just a little tiny cup of tea. You were just, and you and Fallon are the same age. And so then when you met and the two of you were so similar, it was actually kind of interesting to see how well all of our girls were cast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. And watching her and Maria raid the craft truck, their all-time favorite thing to do. Remember when we dropped Maria off at the airport after she spent the week with us in Arizona? and they were clinging to each other and crying when they were little girls because they didn't want to be apart. It was so cute. They were close. And I don't think a lot of people get that. They grew up together. They're the same age. I think their birthdays are like 5 weeks apart, something around there. So Maria to us was just another middle daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
She was fun.
We've had some short vacations with her, and just love her. She's great.
She is great. So it was incredible to be part of a show where not only did I have these 3 daughters, and I remember saying this to them when they were little, can you believe that your life is so interesting that they hired actresses to play you? And they'd smile and they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So it was just, they thought everybody had actresses to play them in a set that looked like their house. They just thought that was like another house of theirs. I mean, they didn't know anything else. So for kids that are, there's not many kids that have been raised under those circumstances. So they're pretty unique in that respect, and in many actually. But I felt very fortunate to be able to raise them around a set and television. And it ended up being a really good thing because Sophia's just, she does film. That's what she does.
Right. Well, in that last clip, she said, making a video as 12-year-olds do. It's like, well, no, not a lot of 12-year-olds. Some do, but you were definitely drawn to that camera and the tripod and all that.
She's actually been making them since she was like 8 because she had that blue. Remember what that?
Right, digital blue.
Digital blue. And she learned to walk holding onto a tripod. We actually have that on video, and she looks adorable. So instead of a walker, she'd run around the house with a tripod.
Right.
So I think there are a lot of benefits to it. We've had an unusual life. The girls have had an unusual life. I wouldn't trade it for an ordinary one for anything. And I hope you've enjoyed going over some of our favorites. Were there any episodes that were your favorites that we didn't cover?
To cut that out. Sorry about that.
What did I tell you the last time we recorded? Take a
Zyrtec, your friend, right? Well, remember we had you've had a lot of people on. You had you had people from Mortuary. You've had people that I'm Dead Now What that produce things spiritual. You had a monkey on.
I had a monkey. Oh, the Monkeys. Yeah, the band. Okay, gotcha.
We hit some of my favorites, but just when going through all 99,
I know
it's quite a collection. Quite, you should be proud of every single one.
I am. So, thank you, Joe, for being by my side today and always. Here's to more adventures together. Wait, I got to get a clink clink on that. Clink clink clink. And cheers to all of you. Look at all that lipstick. Okay. As a big thank you to my Dead Life listeners, and in celebration of the Dead Life's 100th episode from August 23rd to 26th, you can go to my website, AllisonDubois.com. And if you buy a ticket to one of my upcoming events, and I never do this, you'll get a second one 50% off. So you can bring a friend and make it more of a vacation, some sort of a retreat, maybe a spiritual getaway. This gift to my listeners ends Friday at midnight. That's Friday the 26th. Mountain Standard Time?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have to.
Which is currently Pacific Daylight Time. So California time. Think about it.
I'm so glad we don't change our times. Anyways, be sure to enter the code DEADLIFE100. Just put in DEADLIFE100 and you'll get, for the one ticket you buy, you get a second ticket 50% off. So that's a thank you for listening to me for the last 2 years, whether you think my episodes are interesting or just tune in because COVID was around and you were a little lonely. I'm happy I could be there. If you have a question for me about the afterlife or you want to share an experience that you've had with the supernatural, Call me at 802-DEAD-811. That's 802-3323-811. And leave me a voicemail. That might be shared on an upcoming episode. So when you leave your voicemail, keep in mind that we might take a snippet of it and share it with the audience because we thought you were interesting and we thought everybody should know how interesting you are. So thank you to my Dead Life listeners and to all of my believers out there. Don't stop believing.